I want to tell you a story, a true story, about a young man who is very close to me, who's given me permission to tell his story under the condition that I don't give his real name. So, for the rest of this story, he'll be referred to as D. D's a good kid. Young man. He's a good guy, and I've known him for years. Hard worker. It's amazing because most guys his age have a really crappy work ethic. Not this guy. Ever since he's been legally able to work at 15 to 8 months, he has been working for somebody, doing something. I think the longest time he's ever been without a job might have been a week, week and a half, at the most. Here's the challenge though. D has a very strained relationship with his father. Now, once you reach adulthood, your relationship with your dad is something that is now in your hands as well as his. It's a team effort. So maybe that's a different video for a different day, but this is an important detail because of what comes later. See, because he and his dad didn't have the closest relationship growing up, at some point in his youth, most likely around puberty, he made the decision on his own that if ever the opportunity presented itself for him to have his own family, he would improve where he feels his dad failed him or fell short. So what happened was, in his mid-20s, he met with the first of his most awful decisions, in that he got himself involved with a single MOM. I gotta spell it out because YouTube's algorithm is punitive when it comes to certain terms. But he met her. She was attractive, but she already had 2 other kids by 2 other different men. Now, I've seen the young lady. When I first met her, I was like, okay, I get why you're there. Pretty face. Despite the fact she popped out 2 kids, she was still pretty young, so her body snapped back like a rubber band. I totally get it, at least from the outside looking in. But the problem was, as you can probably guess, a woman who's already 2 for 2 has an MO. She was already a master of working the system for her benefit when it came to things like welfare, when it came to things like child support, when it came to things like Section 8 housing. This chick was a pro at using taxpayer money and child support money to her benefit. What does D do? Despite being warned against it, he gets her pregnant. And they have a little girl. Now, the little girl was beautiful. She was a pretty little girl, and she was well behaved for a kid. Hardly ever cried at all, actually. I remember that. But then tragedy struck. And this little girl, just months after being born, would be lost to SIDS, or Sudden Infant Death Syndrome. And it broke his heart, as you could imagine, to lose a child at all. Certainly to lose one at that age. Just months old, devastated him. They didn't last much longer after that because she no longer had any leverage over him. She couldn't get any finances out of him because the child, which was the cash cow, the 3rd one in a row for her, from her perspective, no longer existed. And therefore, she had no further legal right to extract resources from him. So, they parted ways. And you would think at this point in the game, the young fellow, who again is a sharp guy, he's not a dummy. I want to put that out there for you guys listen to this story. He's not a dumb guy. I like him a lot. I have a lot of respect for him. I love him dearly. But sometimes habits get formed, gentlemen. And what would happen is, years later, he'd meet another single MOM. This time, just a 1-for-1. Little girl who her dad isn't in the picture, hardly ever sees him. And when she met D, she literally latched on to him. He never got the "you're not my daddy." He never got the "you can't tell me what to do." Whatever instructions he gave that little girl, she followed to the letter, which is unusual in most stepdaddy situations. So what happens next? Well, against my advice and the advice of others in his family and his friends, he decided to do what he thought was the right thing. And he married this girl. Because he loved the little girl and he wanted, again, the family that in his mind he never had, because his folks split when he was very, very young. And he had something to prove. I can be better at this than my dad was. I would imagine was the driving force behind a decision that drastic. When he broke the news to me, it was after the fact. I knew he was considering it, but I didn't know he was gonna actually pull the trigger and go sign that government contract. But when what was done, I told him, I said, hey, listen, congratulations. I'm here with any advice and any counsel that you may need. I'm a phone call away. He appreciated it, said thank you, and he went on his way. Well, 7 years after the fact, here we are today. And he has had to file for divorce from his wife, who he should have never had in the first place. In that time, she has given birth to another little girl, his daughter, as confirmed by a DNA test. And he relished his role for a while. The problem was, as mentioned before, this young man is a hard worker. He's unlike a lot in his generation, in that he put himself in a position to be the sole provider because they couldn't afford daycare. So what would he do? He would go out and get not just one, not just two, but 3 jobs. Now I understand, a young man in the prime of his youth and vitality could probably juggle something like that. But the body does have its limitations. And what would ultimately happen is, between working these 3 jobs, not getting the proper sleep, hardly ever getting the proper hydration, eating what I imagine is a bunch of fast food and other things of convenience, the body had enough. And he was admitted to the ER. Thankfully, he pulled through. But what do you think his so-called wife's response was to him calling her from the ER? Was it, oh my God, honey, are you okay? Oh my God, honey, maybe I can get a job. Maybe I can get one of the relatives to watch the kids so you can take some of that load off of you and you can... No. He was chastised for being hospitalized. It became all about her and how this makes her life more difficult, him needing immediate medical attention. And I think this was an awakening for our friend. Because how dare you? Your life is possible. Your quality of life is possible. Every single crumb in that refrigerator is paid for by me. All the bills are paid for by me. And this is what I have to look forward to when I call my so-called wife and tell her I'm at the hospital because my body almost completely gave out. Remarkable. So imagine for a moment, fellas. You spend 7 years of your life, that's 3 shy of a decade, raising a daughter who's not yours, but who thankfully doesn't make it a nightmare. You finally do have your own daughter with this same woman, and you're doing everything you can according to what society at large programs us to believe modern women still deserve. And then you find out, one day you're at work, because you just got a brand new promotion at your job. You're making way more money now than you ever were before. You're in a position to turn the corner financially in terms of debt service, in terms of improving the quality of life of everybody under your dominion. This is wife, kids, the whole 9, the furniture in the house, all of it. Maybe even move to a better location, better neighborhood. Who knows? But you're in a position now where that's at least a possibility where it wasn't before. You come home and sitting on your couch is the absentee father of the daughter you've been raising for almost a decade. And your so-called wife didn't even bother to call you and tell you. Her words are, I didn't tell you because I thought you'd be mad. I guess you thought I'd be a lot more happy if you kept things this important from me, huh? I guess that made more sense. Or could it be women know exactly what they're doing 100% of the time, and that in some women's mindset, it's a whole lot better to ask for forgiveness than permission? Our friend D said that's enough. Enough was enough. He had put up with the mood swings. He had put up with the lack of support. He had put up with taking someone else's responsibility onto himself and getting no accolades and no acknowledgement for it. And he did what very few American men ever do. And he filed for divorce just a few days ago. Good on him. Good on him. Proactively, he placed himself on child support. Well, if that's what his attorney gave him the advice to do, then that's what his attorney gave him the advice to do. I'm not going to get into that, but fine. So now she is upset by the fact that she couldn't have her cake and eat it too. And she's trying to gum up the works, as they say. trying to make this divorce as complicated as possible because you can't get one overnight in our state. It takes at least a year and a half or so to get that done. So she's made it her mind up to be as obstinate as possible. She intends to be nothing but a speed bump, a pothole, and a landmine effectively. So what's the takeaway from all this? What's the story that you guys can glean from? Well, there may be several. One of whom is, I did a video a while back about should you date single mothers? I left a question mark there because every man is going to make his own decision in terms of that decision. Every man is going to make his own call as to whether or not that's the best move for him. And I'll leave you to it. But moreover, when you're dealing with a female who has no structure, who has no understanding of masculine authority and how to operate within it, you are setting yourself up for a drastic failure. It's devastating what happens to men who give their meat, their money, their energy, their attention, and their time to a female who never deserved access to any one of the four. And you now are a decade effectively down the drain for nothing. Well, rephrase. He's got his little girl, and he does have the affection of that other little girl who hopefully his relationship with her won't be highly negatively affected because she and her mom are not a part of his everyday life anymore now. But we'll see how that goes in time. But gentlemen, for you guys who don't have kids, it does not benefit you to be serious about a woman who does. Now, a guy like me, I got kids of my own. It's not ideal, but at least it does make more sense for a guy like me to date a single mom, because at the very least, there's some commonality there. And yeah, it's a gray area at best, but again, it makes more sense for a guy like me to do it than any of you single guys who've never born children to do it. So please be careful in that regard. Number two, it is almost always a mistake to marry an American, Canadian, or English woman who was born after 1969. The quality level of women from that generation compared to the ones you had to pick from is night and day. Now, unfortunately, most guys that are young, in their 20s, 30s, aren't really checking for 60-plus-year-old women. And I understand that. I get it. Because some of you guys want a family one day. I can respect it, and I can empathize with that. Because I did too. But if you're going to get married, fellas, you need to ask yourself, where I would get married, what are the laws of that jurisdiction surrounding marriage? What do I stand to lose? Because men always lose more than women do when it comes to divorce, unless you are smart enough beforehand to really focus and clamp down on your asset protection. Most guys aren't, though. And that's where most of us fall short, because society at large does not want men to be knowledgeable about asset protection, especially when it comes to a woman and her acquisition of wealth through marriage. Most of the women who are the world's wealthiest women, according to Forbes magazine, got their money through inheritance or divorce settlements. Not because they started some company the world can't live without, not because they provide some service that the world can't live without, like a movie we all had to go and watch. It was just the best movie ever. We had to go see it. We had to buy that record. We had to buy that thing she invented. No. The 10 most wealthiest women in the world got their money because daddy died and left it to her, or because she pulled the pin on a grenade of the family and blew it up for a divorce settlement, child support, and alimony. Do with that information what you will. We're all adults here. Shout out to my guys in middle school and high school. You guys will be adults one day. But please understand, fellas, the danger in aligning yourselves seriously and emotionally, for you guys with no kids I'm talking to specifically, for you guys with no kids, the danger of aligning yourself seriously with a single MOM will set you up for the kind of heartbreak slow country songs can't prepare you for. Will prepare you for the kind of heartbreak that most guys take themselves out of the equation for. I don't want that to be any of you. Men have put guns in their mouths, ropes around their neck, and thrown themselves off of tall buildings because of the pain that comes from having their family snatched away from them at a woman's whim. Guys who never once laid their hand on her. Guys who never once cheated on her. Guys who worked their asses off to try to provide for her. Take her here, take her there, buy her this, buy her that. And it was decided by her that it wasn't enough. Which of course differs greatly from it actually wasn't good enough. for the record. Feel free to quote me on that. So gentlemen, say a prayer for our boy D. He's going through it right now, but he had the strength to leave, where most guys would have stayed for years and tolerated disrespect. "You don't bring another man into my house," was the last thing he told her. Before the very next day at the start of business, he was in a divorce lawyer's office. If you see a guy you love and you care about, and he's going through hell right now with a relationship, be there for him. Encourage him, lift him up, and let him know that this too shall pass. That said, fellas, that's my time. Like the video, comment down below, share with a friend, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thank you again for everybody who's donated to the Cash App. You guys are awesome. I love you dearly, and I couldn't do it without you. Never let your brother suffer in silence when the truth could set him free. Networkers, we working. Until next time.